We've got a poll out, by the way, which is currently running very, very hot, as you might expect. We've got more and more people voting on it than we ever have. 7,367 votes. What should the King say to Trump on his arrival for his state visit to the United States of America? Terribly sorry about Andrew, 3%. Terribly sorry about Harry, 5%. Terribly sorry about Meghan, 3%. And I'm really, really, really sorry about Keir Starmer. That's 90% of you who think he should say that. Let's talk now to one of our favourite Americans of all time. She is, of course, the one and only Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, a very good morning to you.
I'm in my pajamas still, Mike. It's quite early here in DC, but I do live for you.
I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much. I did think you might be in DC, so you're there on a pretty momentous week, I suppose, not just for the visit of the King, but for what happened over the weekend in the Hilton ballroom, which is still quite staggering for a lot of us here. And I know it's not perhaps your area of expertise, but the security, a lot of people asking the question, you know, how easy was it to get into that place without being stopped by Secret Service?
I mean, I know I saw a lot of people giving Donald Trump a hard time when he said, like, this is why I want the ballroom. But I mean, what he was saying was, I know that a ballroom would be secure, and obviously this venue is not secure enough. I covered the 2016 election for Fox when I was younger, when I was a young woman. And it's amazing how much animosity and anger and just, fear we have today compared to those days when there was just so much more joy. And while the mainstream media, they were negative about Trump throughout that process of the 2016 campaign, they watched his speeches in full and would cackle at some of his wit or some of his one-liners. And I do wonder if some of them sat in that room the other night, some of those exact people that have created such division, and wondered if their actions are perpetuating some of this crazy out there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any doubt that some of the rhetoric around Donald Trump has caused people like this character who's a teacher, apparently, God forbid, Cole Thomas Allen, 31 years of age, trained as an engineer. I mean, he's an educated guy. He's not, an idiot. He's not a crazy on the face of it. But it turns out that he's anti-Christian. He's anti-Trump. I mean, we had Brian Cox, an actor who's so anti-Trump that he practically yesterday on the BBC was almost justifying the fact that Trump is so unpopular that it's not surprising that people are trying to kill him. And you're kind of going, that's really not the kind of conversations we should be having. Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, who came out yesterday and said, we must never encourage any kind of political violence. He spends his entire life complaining about Donald Trump, calling him evil, calling him illegal, calling him a lawbreaker, and this inspires these crazy people to do exactly what we saw going on yesterday.
Yeah, Brian Cox, Succession wasn't that good. They killed you off for a reason. No, I think you're right. I think that we have to be more careful with our words, and we have to, it's my understanding that his family received some form of manifesto. Call the police immediately.
Yeah.
If you are observing odd behavior, it's the same with the man that's alleged to have shot Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
If you are observing odd behavior from a family member, you need to tell someone in law enforcement, warn people, because these, we'll talk about it, I imagine, in a second or so, but thankfully, the president wasn't shot. Thankfully, no one in his administration was shot. But there are real world consequences that come from these actions. I mean, Charlie Kirk's children wake up every day without a daddy now. And so people need to be more assertive, and if you see something, say something. If you hear something, if something doesn't seem right to you, you need to alert law enforcement.
Yes. And I'm told that Charlie Kirk's wife was actually in the room. Erica was there, which you can only imagine must have been horrific for her. to suddenly see, the possibility of another gunman breaking into a room that she was involved in occupying, and also obviously with the up security that we're going to see now over King Charles's visit. Is that going to change anything as far as you're aware? Is it going to change anything that they might have wanted to do out in the open air, which they might not do?
I think we'll still visually see what we were hoping to see. Like, in Virginia, he's going to be at a block party. But will he spend as much time? Because King Charles really does like shaking hands and meeting people.
Yeah.
Will we get the block party visuals? Yes. But is he going to spend, as much time actually engaging with people and shaking hands? I don't think he's in the position to do so now.
No, I think the security detail, I mean, we're told there's been a few changes made by Charles's security people, and no doubt Donald Trump's. I mean, he was still quite bullish, wasn't he, yesterday, about the fact that, he wasn't going to be thrown to the ground, he was going to stand his ground, he likes to show that he's still in charge. But presumably this will lead to the next inaugural White House press dinner being held somewhere more secure, not just any hotel where anybody can break into it.
Agreed. We'll see where that, that's supposed to happen within the next 30 days. But I think that we have bigger issues on our hands than another roast session. I feel like as a society, we have to figure out why this has become acceptable. Sadly, I do a lot of British media, and I've heard a lot of British media, and they're going, well, it's coming out of the United States, so we're not so surprised. Think about Reagan, think about JFK. Well, in my lifetime, I had not seen something like this until Charlie Kirk, and I don't want to see it anymore. I mean, I know there was Butler, Pennsylvania, and I was horrified by that, but actually having to watch a public figure pass away on camera, murdered by someone, the first time that I was like, this is not the America I know.
Right.
That was Charlie Kirk, and I don't want it to be the America I know. I mean, I know that you guys kind of look at us and you look at the history books and you associate it with a typical Tuesday, but it hadn't been in my lifetime until recently, and I don't want that.
No, and it should never be normalised. And you're quite right to say that, until, certainly since Reagan, there hasn't really been much action like that. I mean, I remember Reagan being assassinated, but you probably weren't even born. Kennedy or just about
shot at. Reagan lived.
Not assassinated. Yeah, shot at. Yeah, but one of his Secret Service agents was killed, and Reagan was never really the same after that. He kind of deteriorated health-wise much quicker, I think, than he would otherwise have done. But yeah, I don't know what's gone wrong. I've got family that live in America, as you know, and I speak to them on a pretty regular basis, and they're sort of in despair in a lot of it, and again, a lot of it coming from the left, more than it comes from the right in a way, that there's kind of people that they know, my friends who are friends with my family, who would otherwise have been a few years ago just people that voted Democrat, have now become kind of deranged about Donald Trump and can't even mention his name, can't even watch him. And there was one woman who's a friend of my sister's who left the country to avoid the inauguration. And you kind of go, really? Is that how seriously you take it? That's crazy.
That's a poor reflection on our mental health system, I guess, because again, I'm sorry that I keep bringing up this individual, but when George Floyd died in the United States, you saw people take to the streets and set buildings on fire while CNN stood in front of a microphone talking about the peaceful protests.
Yeah, right.
And when Charlie Kirk died, what people did? They went to church. We saw a huge increase in bodies going to church. So I think that analytically and statistically, that tells you that there are different responses to political frustration.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we going to see in the next sort of 24 to 48 hours? What are you going to be covering?
Well, we look forward to seeing the King's arrival around noon. And again, there's been a lot of shifts regarding security. So I wish I could be like, I'm going to give you great access to the tea on Tuesday, but I'm not sure I'm not sure I have that anymore. There's going to be a private tea between Melania, the First Lady, and Queen Camilla, and the King, and President Trump. There's going to be a dinner. Not like a state banquet like you have, because we're different, I guess. So we're boring and we just call it a dinner. The King is going to do a block party in Virginia. He's going to stop by New York to honor, the memory of the victims that we lost in 9/11. And, I just think what we're going to see visually isn't as important as what's going to be going on behind the scenes, where the King has the very important job of mediating a difficult time right now between the U.S. and the U.K. and Starmer. God love him, or does he? I don't know. But the
Well, he
King
doesn't
is
believe in God, so probably not.
Great. That explains everything. That
Right.
tells me everything I need to know. But the King is going to be the mediator, basically, between President Trump and Starmer, who, started off on an awkward foot with Donald Trump because he wasn't shy about loathing Trump
Right.
before he became president. And then he became president, and then he's on his hands and knees delivering a little letter saying,
Yeah.
"Can we send the royal family to the White House?" And now the King has to go basically clean up Starmer's mess, because the president absolutely adores the British royal family, and basically King Charles is your trump card in
Yeah.
this scenario.
Absolutely. And of course, people who say, and I'm going to have a meltdown about it shortly, which we'll put out later, but, the people who say, oh, but what if Trump is in some way, disrespectful to Britain, or what if he says something off colour? He won't, because he's not that stupid, and he behaves in a very different way when he's around King Charles than he does when he's around anybody else, doesn't he?
He does. I'm sorry if somebody's heard me say this before. It's my favorite story. The President Trump grew up in a household that adored the British royal family. His mother had scrapbooks as a little girl dedicated to Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. As when he was a little boy, the whole house would stop and watch the television if there was anything royal related happening or any royal news happening. And so, if you go actually look at 1980s and 1990s images of the homes he's creating for himself and his family, they're very royal-esque. So this is a manifestation come true for him. This is a dream come true for him. He knows he'd be making his mother and her family really proud with this access he has to the British royal family. And I think that he really admires them and loves the tradition, loves the history. That's why they have such a wonderful working relationship.
I do. Well, Kinsey, listen, I really appreciate you staying up specially for us, or getting up specially for us. So go get some more sleep, because you're going to have a busy time of it, I suspect, over the next few days. But we'll perhaps talk to you again. The Welsh doctor says Kinsey in her PJs like a dream come true. That's very kind. We'll have to do it more often. But listen, have a lovely visit, and we'll talk to you. I will check in with you again maybe in a couple of days and see how it all went.
I can't wait. See you soon.
Great to see you. Kinsey Schofield reporting into us.